Hello, and welcome to our webinar, the Chainsaw Safety 101 today, put on by the Alliance for Green Heat. I am Hannah Stinson. I am the Energy Equity Program Manager for our small team. A little about the Alliance for Green Heat. We are a small independent nonprofit that promotes renewable heat and expertise in cleaner and more efficient wood and pellet heating. The majority of our funding now comes from the USDA Forest Service to support firewood banks that serve tribes and low-income communities, and other funding has come from the DOE, Osprey Foundation, and NYSERDA, and other foundations. We're based in Tacoma Park, Maryland, with staff in Arkansas, Wisconsin, and Wyoming. Myself, founded in 2009, and a 501c3 tax-exempt organization. Next slide, Darren. Today we're excited because we have 26 firewood banks registered to join us. This specialized training was something a lot of firewood banks were asking for or wanting to add to their training opportunities for their volunteers. Of course, this doesn't replace an in-person chainsaw training, but it is a great refresher for some or introduction to chainsaws for others. Of our grantees, they are familiar with our Firewood Bank Assistance Program, and we know that the last 3 years have been awesome to join with all the firewood banks, and we're looking to this next season to bring back the program. We don't have updates right now, but watch for updates on our newsletter, which comes out every month, the Firewood Bank Commons, or our website, firewoodbanks.org. Next slide. A little housekeeping. We have the chat function turned on because we will be asking a few questions for the audience about how you use chainsaws, what your favorites are. But the end of this webinar, we'll have 10 to 15 minutes for question and answers, and that when Scott and Emily are going to take the floor and answer some of your specific questions. Please submit your questions as you have them, but we'll review all of them at the end of the presentations. Registrants will receive a link to the recording and slides after our webinar. And if you need a continuing education credit, please email me at hannah@forgreenheat.org, and I can provide that. Also, the chat will not be monitored, so if you do have issues that come up, please send an email my way, and we'll try to work it out while going live. Next slide, please. We are filming today live from the historic Fort Missoula, so we thank them so much for hosting our webinar. The historic Fort Missoula equipment space is known for its sawmill, which is brought back into action twice a year. This ground represents a partnership with the Montana Historic Equipment area and the Montana Society of American Foresters and Historical Museum. It's dedicated to sharing the history of natural resources in Western Montana through live demonstrations, displays of equipment, and interpretive signage that offers a glimpse into the Montana's history of timber, mining, and antique steam engines. So come check it out if you're ever up here to Missoula. Last slide. And to introduce our amazing speakers, today we have Emily Garlow coming to us from White Sulphur Springs with the Red Ants Pants Foundation. Emily is a professional sawyer with 2 decades of experience as a wildland firefighter, logger, arborist, and structure firefighter. She brings a deep well of technical knowledge and field-tested expertise. She's also the lead chainsaw trainer at the Red Ants Pants Foundation and teaches courses in necessary life skills like trailer backing. Through her work with the foundation, Emily is passionate about creating a learning environment where women can grow their skills, overcome intimidation, and build lasting confidence in themselves and each other. After Emily, we'll have Scott, who will be presenting live behind me here. And Scott Keene is a certified forester and accredited logging professional in the logging industry since 1978. He started with Pyramid Mountain Lumber as a resource forester and log yard supervisor. He's a two-time world champion and world record holder in hot saw, actively involved in University of Montana's Sawyer team, the Woodsmiths, and the chair of the historic equipment area at Fort Missoula, which is also why we're able to use this space. So with that said, we'll move into our first presenter, Emily, and take it away, Emily.
All right. Thanks for the introduction, Hannah. I'm really happy to be here today. As Hannah said, I live in Missoula, Montana, and I'm an arborist and tree climber. Pretty much run chainsaws all day, every day, mostly disassembling trees from the top down and then bucking them on the ground. But the only thing that's more fun than running chainsaws is talking about chainsaws. So here we go. I'm going to attempt to share my screen. And we've got a little video for everyone about chainsaw PPE and starting chainsaws, as well as chain breaking. Uh, I will just say out of the gate, this is a very quick session about running chainsaws. We have a class through the Red Ants Pants Foundation. That's 2.5 days of nothing but chainsaws, safety, PPE, lots of time running chainsaws in a safe environment with instructors. So if you have any interest, please look into that for a more in-depth conversation about chainsaws. Great group of people. We always have a ton of laughs. It's at the end of September, early October. So look into that if you want more information. But for right now, we're going to go in with a video about PPE and starting chainsaws. Okay. All right, I think it's going to work. So out of the gate, PPE, or personal protective equipment, is the first part about running a chainsaw. This is all necessary equipment that we need for every time we're out in the field. The PPE is going to include a hard hat, hearing protection, a face shield, long sleeves, gloves, pants that cover your legs, as well as chaps that go down to your boots, and then a good set of working boots. Now we're going to get into starting a chainsaw in two different ways. The ground starting method is shown here, and then the next way will be knee starting, which will be kind of the primary focus of this video. Before we turn on a chainsaw, we're going to engage the chain brake always, and then we're going to put our saw into the on position. This saw has a choke, and a lot of electric chainsaws just have an on and off position. The next step on this gas saw will be to push the decompression valve, which makes it a little bit easier for the operator to pull the cord. And then we are going to firmly grasp the handlebar with our left hand and secure the chainsaw in either the ground or between our legs. In either position, we're going to want to engage our core and our legs rather than using just our arms to pull the cord. Use your right hand to firmly grasp the pull cord and give it a short, quick pull. Here's the full sequence on a cold chainsaw. Full choke, chain brake, decompression valve. Secure the saw between your legs. Grasp the cord and give a short, quick pull. This is a cold saw, so it usually takes a couple of tries for the engine to turn over. And this is a ground start on a saw that has been warmed up. Short, quick pull. Now the saw is running. Disengage that chain brake. Run the saw. Engage the chain brake and turn the saw off. Now for a little chain braking. To disengage the chain brake, keep your left thumb hooked on the handlebar. Reach your left fingers to grasp the front handguard and pull it back towards your body. When you hear a click, you can move your left hand back to the handlebar and engage the throttle to move the chain around the bar. Using the chain brake is something that people need to practice before they use their saw in the field. Sometimes you can practice it 10 or 15 times before you even get your saw running. It needs to become muscle memory, as it's a very important part of using your saw safely. All right. For our next slide here. Oopsies. Next slide. Okay. We are going to start talking about working with a group of people that you may have not worked with before and doing your safe Sawyer assessment. So, a lot of you folks probably have not worked together before, which is just fine, but what's going to become the most important is communicating a safety plan and developing a plan for how to talk about your work zones and what your plan is for the day. So out of the gate, when you approach your team, what you're going to want to see is everybody having their proper PPE available to them. And then a briefing before people get to work is really important. One of the things you're going to want to talk about in the briefing is, do you have any medical personnel on site? Does there happen to be a EMT or a doctor in your group? Do you have a trauma kit somewhere nearby? If so, where would that be? Where's your nearest hospital? Things like that that aren't very fun to talk about, but better to know it and not need it than need it and not know it. So the PPE is always something that I kind of get a general impression of who I'm working with. If people have their PPE available, it gives me a sense of professionalism, and this is a group of people that I'm going to want to work with. Versus if they're being lax on PPE, they could be lax about their safety or my safety. So that's something that I note and maybe decide that I don't want to work with that group. Or if they're looking like they're going to be safe for the day, I'll stick around. Um, One of the other things before the saws are running is it's important to talk about hand signals and how you're going to communicate with one another. It's obviously going to be really loud when the saws are running. So if you need someone to stop a saw, just assume that they've got tunnel vision and they can't see you and they can't hear you. So a big arm motion like this is a good indication that, hey, I need to talk to you, turn your saw off. Another thing that we'll use in the field with our groups is this signal, kind of across your neck. It just means, hey, turn your saw off, please. Um, and just give somebody the common courtesy of turning your saw off if they give you that notice. They're not going to be able to yell over your chainsaw. And if somebody comes into your work zone, the first thing you're going to do is hit your chain brake to make sure that the chain isn't still going to be spinning, and then turn that saw off for them. I like to keep a wide berth from people that I haven't worked with before. 10 feet seems like a lot, but the bars are long, things can happen quickly. There could be a piece of wood that's going to hit the ground and roll. So just err on the side of safety. If you need someone to turn their saw off and you're going to approach them, try to catch their eye, give them the hand signal, hey, please turn your saw off, or this signal. Once the saw is no longer running, it's obviously safe to go into their work area. Um, so then another thing that we're going to talk about in that briefing is a couple distinct work areas on your job site. So you may have noticed in the video, I was working on a bucking stand. That is just made out of a couple of 2x4s, really cheap and easy to put together. That could be one of your distinct work areas, or if you don't have the ability to come up with some of those bucking stands, you can kind of pull and separate the logs into different piles so that people are working in different areas. I feel like that's really important to not have multiple saws working on the same log for sure, and not even working on the same pile. That's just a bad combination. So it's again, we're gonna make sure that we've got good communication about our safety plan. Everybody's got their PPE, what each person's work area will be on the job site. These are all basic things that need to be done on every work zone. And then we're going to get into our Safe Sawyer assessment. This is something that each person is going to do for themselves multiple times throughout the day. I like to keep tabs on myself and hold myself accountable for how well I'm cutting or how poorly I'm cutting. And it's not a big deal. Everybody has a bad day where you throw your chain, you rock your bar, your cuts aren't lining up very well. I got a rule for myself that if I throw my chain, I've got to take a 10-minute timeout. I drink some water, hang out, don't get too frustrated. It's just kind of part of the deal. But when you are the sawyer, you are in control of your work area, and it's your responsibility to keep yourself safe and keep others safe around you. So make sure that you can get tunnel vision on your cut and all those things, but also, how am I doing today? Is my head here? Am I in the game? If I'm elsewhere and I'm stressed about something that's going to happen later in the day, probably not a good day for me to be running a chainsaw. So the Safe Sawyer assessment is 4 different steps. SAFE, it's a handy little acronym to help us remind ourselves of what we're looking for. So the first thing we're going to do is survey the scene. That's kind of a general impression of the work area. We're looking for different hazards like snags in the area, roads, power lines, other people working in your area. Some of these hazards we're going to mitigate. Some things we're just going to get an idea about. Okay, I've got a group of people working over there. There's a road over there, kind of a blind corner, whatever it's going to be. The next thing we're going to do is assess the tree or log that we're working on. So when we're doing that, we're thinking about, is this tree live or dead? What are the forces on the tree, leans or binds? So that is going to also be evolving through the day as you're making your cuts. The tree will be changing and you're going to continually assess, okay, this tree is now on the ground as opposed to being leaning up on something, and my cut plan needs to evolve with that. The cut plan is based on what you see of your log. What is your method going to be for cutting this thing? How is your footing going to look? What are you expecting the log to do when you finish your cut? Is it going to roll towards you? Is it going to roll away from you? Will it move towards another group of people? Um, you're going to be cutting with control and intent. I kind of like to think of each cut as a little puzzle. I'll say, hey, I think that my bind is on the top. I'm going to cut this way and then confirm if that happens or not. And if I'm making good predictions and things are going well, I'm going to feel good and keep on cutting. If I keep on pinching my bar and things are not lining up and I keep on missing cues, it probably is a good indication to sit in the shade for a minute, take a break. And then we're going to look for our escape route, which on flat ground could be as simple as stepping away from the log. But it's kind of just wanting to know, hey, if something gets weird here, which direction am I going to go? And then with your escape route, are there other people in the area? Have they moved into your area? So the Safe Sawyer assessment is something that we're going to do multiple times a day. And once you get used to doing it and holding yourself accountable for going through this, it can be pretty quick and easy. If you're a newer sawyer, it could take a couple of minutes, but it's kind of just like using your chain brake. Get in the habit of making sure that you're going through this quick assessment, and it'll become second nature. All right, forces on the saw. So anybody who has run a saw has probably felt that this at times the power head will come back towards you, and at other times it will move away from you towards the log. And that's because as the chain goes around the bar, it creates force. So if we're cutting with the top of the bar, that saw is going to be pushing back towards you into your body, which is not a bad thing. It's just how it works. And then if you're cutting with the bottom of the bar, it's going to be pulling that power head into the log. You probably felt that before, and cutting with the bottom of the bar is the most efficient way to use a chainsaw in that gravity is working in your favor. The bar is cutting down through the log. So we cut with both the top and the bottom of the bar, but I'd say, I don't know, 80% of the cutting that you're going to do will be with the bottom of your bar. The only place that we don't want to cut with is the top corner, the tip of your bar. What happens when you do that is that the bar is able to come back towards your body, and that's something that's called kickback. Scott will probably go into that more later, but that's when the blade comes back towards your body, and we're wearing a face guard and we're good and safe, but we don't want that to happen. The chain brake will also engage if kickback occurs, but just know that we can cut with the top of the bar, we can cut with the bottom of the bar, we're just not going to cut with the tip only. All right, so forces on the tree, gravity is always at play when we're cutting. So each log, each piece of wood is going to have some kind of force on it, whether it's sitting on the ground or if it's up in a bucking stand, there's going to be some force happening. So the first term that you may or may not have heard of is kerf. And as you take your bar and you're cutting down through a log, the kerf is the little gap that is where your bar has been. It's the exact width of your bar. So the kerf is a really great diagnostic tool for you to figure out, are the forces on this tree pushing into that kerf? Is it closing and compressing my kerf, or is it starting to open up? So we are always going to have compression and tension in each log that we're working on. And the compression and tension form what's known as binds. So a top bind is when the compression is on the top of your log and the tension is on the bottom. So the term bind is going to refer to where the compression is in that log. And typically when we're coming up with our cut plan, we're going to do a relief cut on the top of a top bind to relieve that compression. So you're always going to just cut your compression about a third of the way through the log and then finish by completing your cut on the tension side. So for a top bind shown in this picture on the left, the fibers on the top of that log are compressing together. So my cut plan would be to do that relief cut about 1/3 of the diameter of that log and then finish it by relieving the tension from the bottom. Conversely, the bottom bind on the right means that your compression is on the bottom and your tension's on the top. So I would start this by cutting about a third of the way through the bottom of that log and then finishing on the top. All right, we've got one more video here of bucking techniques. All right, that is that bucking stand that I was talking about earlier. And we're going to go through a quick real-time safe Sawyer assessment, surveying the scene, getting that rock out of the way of my footing, checking that my bucking stand is nice and secure, the log in the bucking stand isn't going to go anywhere. My cut plan for this log is going to be to make a little relief cut on the bottom and then finish the cut on the top. And then as you could see, I looked around real quick to make sure nobody was coming into my workspace. Release the chain break, relief cut on the bottom about a third of the way, and then wait for the chain to slow down before finishing the cut on the top of that log. Now we're going to go over to bucking a log on the ground. So this is probably the primary way that you are all going to be working, I'd imagine. So typically for this, I'm going to cut 2/3 of the way through each piece of firewood, working my way down the log before rolling the log with my foot and then finishing the cut with the top of my bar. So you can do this while standing. It's also convenient and easy on my back to do it while I'm kneeling. Based on the length of your bar, standing might be more comfortable than leaning over like this. That'll just kind of be personal preference. So I've rolled the log with my foot and now I'm completing all of these cuts with the top of the bar. And it's a great way to keep your bar out of the dirt. And for me, it's just a lot more efficient to buck up a log like this. And it's easy to do it by myself. Versus with the bucking stands, you have to have somebody else who's available to lift the log onto the bucking stand. So finishing by cutting both from standing and from kneeling. Another advantage of this way is it's easier to see your kerf when you're kneeling. You can line it up a little bit more easily. We'll finish this last one standing. And notice that in between each time I move my feet, I'm going to be using that chain break. We never move our feet with the chain break not engaged. And this last one here is cutting a log that's on a pile, making the cut, chain break, bump down to the next piece, release the chain break, cut 2/3 of the way through that log, chain break again. And notice that my left hand never comes off of that handlebar. That's the home base. Your left hand lives there. Now I'm going to finish those cuts with the top of my bar. It's another easy way to save your back by cutting up at a comfortable height rather than on the ground. So that is a quick and dirty bucking, starting, chain breaking, a lot of material very quickly. Oopsies. Okay, last slide. Another plug for the Red Ants Pants chainsaw classes. Great group of people. We go through all of this information much more slowly, far more in depth. It's always a great time to be in Montana. Consider signing up for one of these classes if you'd like for some more information. Great group of people, and you'll walk away feeling really, really confident about your chainsaw skills. That's it for my section. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and kick it over to Scott.
Oh, Hannah, go ahead and unmute yourself for us.
Audio good?
Yep, it's
Can you
good.
hear me?
Great.
Oh.
Well, thank you so much, Emily. Now we'll keep going with the conversation on chainsaws and with Scott.
So, hello everybody. My name is Scott Keene. I've been a professional forester, retired about 3-4 years ago. Spent my life out here in basically Montana. We put this course on for a lot of the new University of Montana Wismas team students. And also we've done a lot for small woodlot owners. And so we usually do this inside with a little bit of field, but we're doing a little hybrid today. So I'm gonna sort of have my cheat sheet notes instead of my PowerPoint. So a couple quick tips, some of the basics. Chainsaws are meant to cut wood, nothing else. That's all they're designed for, and they're very good at it. There's no tree or no piece of firewood that's out there that's worth the person's life or a trip to ER. So safety is always the most important. Be aware of objects, nails, anything when you're sawing around, if you know it's coming from an old farmer's place by a fence or insulators. We've run into those a lot. So chainsaw, this saw is moving about 100 miles an hour, the chain. So if you do the math, in 1 second, 10 teeth are going by. So extremely fast. And if you hit something, and by the time you realize it, you've basically dulled your chain. So maintain your sharp chain. If it's dull, stop, sharpen your chain. A lot of professional sawyers now, instead of sharpening out in the woods, they'll carry 2 or 3 chains in their pack and just swap chains. And it's faster than they have those automatic grinders at home. But you're going to spend less energy with a sharp saw than trying to push a dull saw. Operate at full throttle. Doesn't mean you can trigger it a little bit, but they're designed to cut wood at full throttle. And that means all the teeth cutting. So, and always be aware, and we've talked a little bit about your bar tip. We'll talk about that later. That's one of the most dangerous parts besides the teeth. So, one of the most dangerous things you can buy without a background check. They are designed to cut wood. They do very well, and that's why we have the safety gear. One of the things that we found over the years is they don't come with training. You can go down to one of the best saw shops in Missoula, they don't offer training. And so we put these courses on to do that. My dad handed me a chainsaw when I was in high school, and I had no idea what I was doing. Finally came out here, I learned, and but there's a lot of mistakes made by that passing down the wrong knowledge. So lack of PPE. When I first started in the late 70s, there was no PPE, there was no shaps, and we had a lot of chainsaw cuts. They did wear hard hats, but that was about the only. So through the years, we've been really pushing some type of shaps, whether you use the outside shaps. They make a pants style shap that actually slips inside, or literally a purpose built pants. Either way, whatever's comfortable for you, the shaps will save your leg. So, and if you're fatigued, getting tired, that also means you're getting lazy, and you're going to start cutting corners, and you're going to start using your leg to push your saw, and you get too close. So if you're tired, take a break. Yeah, so one of the pre-questions was, what do I do and how can I cut overhead? The answer is never. So if you're cutting overhead, one of the problems is the chain brake is designed to be worked down here. If you're up here, by the time that kicks back, probably going into your hard hat. So if you have something overhead, if you're pruning, get a pruning saw. Those little long poles are great. Anything overhead, get that tree on the ground before you saw it. So one of the things we always stress is fit the saw that, pick a saw that fits your needs and pick a saw that fits you. Our saying is the right saw for the right wood, for the right person with the right PPE. So we have sort of a pretty good display out here of saws. And we have everything from the small, what we call the tomato slicers, to the 5.5, 6 cube saws, professional saws, and everything in between. So a lot of times we'd always hear is they'd get passed down a saw and it was either way too big or way too small. So pick a saw that you're going to be cutting the right wood. I mean, if you're in Oregon and you're cutting 28-inch fir day in, day out, yeah, you're going to want a 28, 30-inch bar. If you're only doing 10, 12 inch wood, shorter bars, just fine. The same way with weight. All these do is they cut faster and have more power than the smaller ones. So pick one that fits your needs. So real quick, in Montana and a lot of places in the West with high fire danger, actually they're required to have a fire screen from May through the end of September. And the fire screen is a little tiny screen, 0.023 opening that catches sparks. And buried inside the saws, you have to have a fire screen. Some of them are very obvious, some of them aren't. The fire screens are actually behind those. And if you're running and all of a sudden you've tried everything and it's getting really sluggish, there's a good chance that carbon's built up on that fire screen and it's not letting the exhausts pass. It's in your manual how to clean them, but basically you take the muffler off, you heat those screens up with a little propane torch, knock the carbon off, and you're good to go. If you can't do it, you don't have that access, take it to your local saw shop, because a lot of them are buried deep inside. So they come in multiple different colors, i.e. manufacturers, anywhere from 25 cc's all the way up to like 130 cc's. And again, they do the same thing, but more efficient. If you're just doing small wood, doing little pruning, small saw is just nice. I've had stills and huskies my whole life. Just in the last couple of years, I bought a DeWalt electric, and around the house with the neighbors, it's perfect. But out in the woods all day, they eat batteries. So, but if you have access to the batteries and chargers, they'll work just fine. So pick one that suits you, the right size for the right wood for the right person. So money buys quality. You can go to Harbor Freight, but they probably won't last a couple years. The last still I had almost lasted 25 years. So unfortunately, a log rolled on it and smashed it. That happens. But a lot of your good stills and huskies, well maintained, will last you 20 years. And so, my opinion, this is Scott's opinion, I like stills or huskies. There used to be some, Poulan used to make them. McCulloch's, when I first started, they were the big brand. Now they're gone. So find one that is you can get take to a saw shop if you don't want to do it. Find one that'll last. But this is an $1,100 saw. So the average homeowner is probably not going to buy an $1,100 saw. This you're getting into $400 or $500. And even in the stills and huskies, they have good, better, and best. So they have the farmer grade, the homeowner grade, all the way up to professional grade. And it's just parts inside. Instead of plastic, you go to, metal for gears and such like that. So Maintenance, except the electrics, they're all two-stroke, unlike your car. So you have to mix oil in with your gas. So we use what they call these Dolmars. That's our mix. That's our bar oil. They're just about perfectly timed so that when you're out of gas, you should be out of bar oil. So what's really nice now still, and a lot of these guys have made these little containers. They're 2.7 ounces, and you pour those for 1 gallon. You don't have to be a chemistry professor to mix anymore. Throw in a gallon, put that in, shake it up, and you're good to go. So bar oil, you can actually use about any oil that's out there. I know a lot of professional sawyers that get with mechanic shops. They change the oil on cats and stuff, and they'll use that all day long. The nice thing about bar oil is it's tacky, and it's just like a grease, and it stays on your chain a little bit longer. So if you can afford bar oil, but they also do make a summer and winter version, because if you have the winter version, or the summer version trying in the winter, it's just like pouring molasses in January. So they actually do make generic and then winter and summer. So if you're going to saw all winter long, get the lighter grade stuff for the winter. No. Air filters, we're going to go over just some quick maintenance. The saws all have air cleaners, and each one of these tops is different. Some pop right off with screws, some pop off with springs, but they get inside. So you have your air filter. Every one of these are going to be different. You want to keep that clean. A lot of times you'll just see these caked with sawdust and dirt, and it's just like the old, choke on a car. You can't run it when it's trying to starve for air. So clean it. They come right off. You can either tap them, take a air hose to them, but they're really simple. Keep your fins clean. That's another thing with certain wood. Larch is real pitchy, and will actually start coating all your fins, and it won't cool, and it'll start overheating and vapor locking. So the other thing about saws is they actually have a winter and summer setting. A lot of people didn't realize this, but during the winter, you want heat from your fins into your carburetor area to warm up your carburetor. And inside somewhere, this one is this little thing right there. And it actually has a snowflake and a sunshine. And you just turn that around. You want it blocked for the summer. You don't want that hot gases into your carburetor, but in the winter you do. So each one's a little bit different. Look at your saw manual, but if you're going to run in the winter, yeah, swap that thing around. So chains. There's just a quick internet search. There's about 40 different styles of chain. They can come in what they call chisel, which is this part of the tooth is actually at 90 degrees. You have chipper, where it's sort of curved, and then you can have full comp or skip truth. There are so many different styles. Find one that suits your needs and your wood. They make they call it anti-kickback. There's no such thing as anti-kickback. It's kickback reduced. Has a little part by the guide that will somewhat protect that portion. But anyway, just get one that you're comfortable with, one that cuts. But remember, they come in different sizes. So they actually come in, this one's a 1/4 inch. This one is 0.325, pretty common in your smaller saws. And then they go into the 3/8. So they actually come in 3 different sizes. And, you know, it's really based on the power of the saw. But one of the things to remember is each size has a very specific file size. So like your 1/4 inch is only 5/32 file, or your 3/8, 7/32. So if you change back and forth, or just make sure you have the right file for the right chain. So, and if you ever have a question, what is my bar, what is my chain designed for? Well, if you look at your bar, buried in there, right by the bar studs, it'll have a little diagram. It will tell you the pitch, which is basically the 3/8 or 0.325, and it'll actually have the gauge. So in all of these, they actually come in different gauges. The gauges is the width of the driver, and they come in 0.5, 0.58, 0.63. Why they didn't standardize it, who knows? But that information is on your bar. It will say right there how many links for your saw, your pitch, and your gauge. So every one of these will be different. So let's see. So filing a dull saw. This one, they hit a rock and it has rolled. The top of these have chrome that keeps that sharp, that point sharpened. And if you hit something and roll that chrome all the way back, it's almost impossible to get that thing sharp again. So a lot of times, if you are close to its end of its life, like this one is almost ready to just throw away. It's not worth filing, spending an hour and a half. So one of the rules of thumb, it's really hard to do this on a video, but so on a file, we're going to do a 3/8. One of the things, I keep my files with my Dolmar, but pushing them in and out gets them dirty. So I just keep them in this little soda straw, keeps the teeth clean. But you actually, there's a lot of these chains have a little tiny line on the back. This one does, it's almost more, but that's the angle that you want this portion. And you want this handle slightly down, and you're pushing down and towards you. And it's one straight line. It's not this, it's one straight line. And then you go to the next one. And one thing to remember is once you figure out for the first couple teeth how many strokes of the file it's going to take, that's how many strokes you do every tooth on that chain. Because what happens is if you file this one all the way back, these teeth have a slope to them. So if you file this one way back and keep this one forward, this one literally will not cut. It'll just skip. It won't hit any of the wood. So always push your chain forward. Don't go like that. That's the sharp part. And just a couple strokes. 90% of the cutting is done with the tip right there. And once that gets dull, you'll notice it. So one of the things also about, depending on how fast you wear your chain down, but these are called guides. And what they do is they ride on the wood, and right there. And so that tooth cutting, this is riding on the wood. This creates the depth of the tooth. And so as you saw backwards or you file backwards and this slope goes downhill, it actually drops. So every now and then you have to file the guides, and there's a couple different guides. This one is adjustable, and each saw and each pitch will have a different style or a different gauge. But on these bigger saws, you can go up to 28, 30 thousandths. Smaller saws, probably a lot less. That'll be in your manual. But basically, you pick a spot on your bar, lay this down, and you would take a flat file and flat file across. Move it forward, do the same. And you do that as you work your chain backwards. Maybe every 10, 15 filings. All depends on how much you file. So if you just take a couple strokes, you could probably file 15, 20 times before you have to take your guides down. But that is one of the pieces that I see a lot that people don't realize, is that as you wear your chain, you actually have to follow your guides. So we'll see what's next. So these are the files. Again, they come in different sizes. Again, check with your local store or your manual. They can, because if you get the wrong size file for your pitch, it'll be the wrong file. So you want the right file for the right chain. So now we're going to get into a little bit more maintenance. So we're going to tear one apart. Oh, the other thing on fuel, one of the things that's just come out in the last couple of years, still came out with this called moto fuel. And what's so unique about it, it's not a petroleum-based fuel. It's actually called Ecrolite. And it's a synthetic fuel. It will last 10 years in an unopened container and 2 years in your saw. And, you know, using stable at the end of the year works. But if you're only going to use your saw once a month, a couple times a year, that is a steam-powered sawmill. So we're doing a boiler test today. So, but pretty expensive. You can get it for anywhere $25 a gallon. But I use it in my saws that I just periodically use. I don't saw as much as I used to, so I literally use this moto fuel, and it will last in your saw for up to 2 years. Won't gum up your carburetor, won't eat your diaphragms in your carburetor. So if you're going to use a lot of fuel day in, day out, yeah, use your standard fuel with your oil mix, and but put stable in right before you winterize it. But yeah, look into that. Actually works really well. So we're going to get into the bar a little bit. You might have to move that. So
Now we can see the tabletop physically, but your head just will cut off.
yeah, it's okay. So unfortunately, Still and Husky never got together, and they have different size nuts and also different size wrenches. So, but take it off, and you peel it off your sprocket, and you want to do this probably every couple times you file, is just to help maintenance. So you take it off and run a knife or something, clean out your bar, do both sides. And the one thing you want to make sure, these are your oil inlets. Those are for your studs to tighten. Those are your oil inlets. So make sure those are open. And your oil comes through here, and it's pumped in by a gear and goes into your bar and around. That's why the bar oil is tacky, so it stays on your bar a little bit longer. The one thing, the saws are designed so that you run out of gas and your oil tank should be about empty. They're designed to almost run out at the same time. If they're not, there is a little tiny screw somewhere buried on this saw, and that is just your oiler. That will increase or decrease your amount of oil you get in your bar. A lot of them, pretty obvious. Let's see if I can find that one. That one's right there. But somewhere on the bottom, you'll find an oiler, and that will increase or decrease your oil. So you want your oil to run out just about when you run out of gas. So clean up that area. And then this is your adjusting screw. So you back that off a little bit. And bars are designed to be AC/DC. They literally designed to be run that way and that way. And that way, when they wear, every time you change it, you clean it, rotate it. Because what happens is that chain is coming off so fast, it wants to be a lariat. If you ever see the cowboys with the lariat, it wants to go in a circle. Same way with the chain. That's the safety pop-off valve. That's actually a good thing. So, if the chain comes off your sprocket, wants to go this way, but the tension, and it comes down and it wears right there. In the same way on your roller tip, comes around, wants to go straight, but the tension's pulling it back, comes back and wears right there. So a lot of the older bars, you'll see wear there and wear there. So just rotate it. So you can put your chain back on. We backed it off a little bit. Make sure your teeth are pointed in the right direction. Your sprocket, check your sprocket every now and then. Your sprocket will wear as everything else wears. Not as much, but it will wear. So they have a little catch, so that's what this thing is if you throw your chain, this little chunk of aluminum, and it will catch your chain, and it'll wrap around that instead of wrapping around your leg. So the other thing, a lot of times I'll do them upside down. Make sure your chain brake doesn't go. Back this one off a little bit more. So as chains wear, they stretch. And so literally, if you buy a new chain, probably by your first or second filing, you're gonna have to tighten it because it'll wanna wear or it'll wanna stretch. So you have quite a bit of adjustment. You hold that. Thank you. So get it under that. That's the little safety catch. It's just designed to catch the chain instead of going into your shafts. So we are in the right way. It usually doesn't take this long. Get it back on your studs. Put your cover on. Put your bar studs back on. Get them a little bit snug for our next procedure. And then take your bar tool or scrunch and righty tighty. And that will push your bar out. You can see it coming up. Make sure it's in the groove. If you have a really sharp chain, you can do this with gloves. This one not so much, but anyway. So people ask, what's the right tension? So the idea is you want it to spin smoothly. And again, for safety, always go in the direction of the chain. Don't go backwards. That's the sharp part. And adjust it with your bar up. So right now it's upside down. So gravity is pushing on the bar, and lift up. Should be just be able to see daylight under the chain, under the drivers. That's about the right tension. You want it to spin smoothly. So that's about perfect. Finish, tighten up your studs, and you're ready to go. So that's just some of the basics. The chain brake, Emily talked a little bit about chain brake. Chain brakes been around, geez, probably 20 years now. Before, they had no protection. So if this is the danger zone, this quadrant, and if you hit, it wants to ride up. Well, these chain brakes will stop them in a millisecond. So they've saved a lot of injuries. Make sure your chain brake's working, and try it on your saw every now and then. Rev it up, hit that chain brake, should stop in an absolute instant. So, so PPE. What do we need for PPE? Hard hats. If there's overhead danger, wear a hard hat, especially like fallen trees. So if you're cutting firewood, it's up to you and the organization whether hard hats are required. For me, if there's no overhead danger, okay, it will protect you a little bit, maybe from a kickback. So whatever your rules and regulations are in that area. Some type of hearing protection, ear muffs or earplugs, eye protection, and gloves, and chaps. So chaps come in every different style, color. They're just like a pair of pants, and they make them in different sizes. These are open in the back. Hannah has a pair on that actually wraps around the calf. So probably more protection, but probably a little hotter in the summer. Again, they do make the pants or the slip-in style, whatever your preference is, probably is just fine. So yeah, just wear them. Function chain brake. And even if I'm just cutting firewood, when I'm sawing, when I'm felling trees, I have sort of this little kit. It's got my wedges, more files, my bar wrench, and a hatchet just to tap my wedges in. But if you're cutting, even on a firewood deck, I pack a wedge just so that, especially when you get in bigger logs, 20, 30-inch logs, as you're cutting, you just tap this in your kerf, and your chances of pinching your saw are just greatly reduced. So get those pretty much any saw shop around. But these were my chaps when I ran hot saw. They're much thicker. Yeah, and every now and then you throw a chain, but as long as your ballistic nylon is intact, you're probably okay. But If you're starting to get your ballistic nylon in here ragged, time to replace them. So, make sure they fit. So Emily sort of talked about starting a saw. The one thing is we still see people putting them over a log and starting them. Well, what that does, you have no control. And it's amazing how many people we still see do that. So you have no hand except this one. And if it kicks back, your hand's not on the chain brake. So the other one, your fingers, your thumb goes on the back side. I don't know if you can see that, but your thumb is on the back side. A lot of people, when chain brakes first came out, they talked about, well, if the saw kicks back, it'll break my thumb. Would you rather have a broken thumb, which I've never heard of, or your hand on the saw and hitting that chain brake? If you have it like this and the saw kicks back, you have no control. So same thing, thumb over, thumb over. I talked about don't cut over your shoulder. So Emily talked about the one on the ground. Put your foot in the handle and start it with your chain brake on. She talked about the knee version. The other version is the same thing. Put it between your thighs. OSHA, for our sawyers, say that is perfectly fine. Again, your thumb over that. And a lot of times, even if you run them, let them sit 10 minutes, sometimes it takes just a little bit of choke. So kickbacks. This is your danger zone, this portion. What happens is that chain going around, and if it hits and grabs, instead of cutting, it grabs. And when those kickbacks, boom, it's instantaneous. And your heart goes to about 500 beats, and that's where the chain brake comes in. So always know where that portion. Now I cut a lot with the tip of my bar, especially when the log is on the ground, but you want to watch that tip because that really easily can kick back. So one thing is used for tree falling, but saws actually have a gun sight. This line goes all around the saw, is 90 degrees to your bar. So we're going to do another video at some point on tree felling. That's a whole different subject. But as you're cutting, you can actually line this up, and this will be your direction of fall. So one of the things that a lot of people I've seen do, they put in their front cut, their undercut, and that shows which way the tree is going to go. And then they'll put in the back cut. But you actually want to leave an inch or two of what they call hinge wood. And that is holding that tree up until that undercut closes. Then the hinge wood breaks, and that is already going in that right direction. But when we were professionally doing logger sports, one of the contests would be to fell a tree, and we'd put a beer can out there at 30 feet, and we could smash a beer can with the top of the tree. So just by using that as the gun sight, and then having that undercut facing where you want, and never cutting your hinge wood. So how are we doing for time? Is it? What's that? Okay, so we're going to dive into some of the people asked about tension compression. In this area, there's no overhead. I'm going to put my glasses already on. So when we're doing, when we're doing wood that has tension compression, we'll sort of show you how. So you ready? So a lot of times when you come up to the log, this is pretty easy. You know it's balanced there, and it's going to want gravity to pull this way. So you have tension wood, or compression wood, and tension wood. So if you just sawed through this, it's going to compress and pinch your bar. Yeah, every now and then that happens, but you try to avoid it. So you actually cut a little bit on the top and then finish your cut from the bottom. So yeah, if you get me some earplugs, I'll put the earplugs on too. They're hard with that. So the earplugs are on the table. So, and then each one's a little bit different. And a lot of times, if it was a blowdown, you don't know. You'll see it sort of snake. You don't know if it's under tension compression. So you just go a little slow. We know a log like this, heavy to tension compression. So
Once you're done with the audio,
what's that?
before you start the saw, I'll take your mic.
We'll do that right now. There's a perfect example of it. Went from compression to tension to compression. So very easy to pinch your saw. So yeah, there's how not to do it. So how much time we got? Want to go to questions and answers? Okay, we'll go to question and answer. So I'll keep this, I guess.
All right. So thank you, Scott.
That was a whirlwind course.
Now, with a few demos under our belt, we can move into our question and answer phase. Emily will come back with us and we can kind of review some questions from the audience. Let's see what we've got. Ooh, here's a good one. How much would a whole PPE package cost?
Good question. Chaps. Man, I haven't bought them in a long time, but hard hats, good quality hard hats, probably get for 30 to 50. Chaps probably are going for 80 to 100. Gloves, pretty simple. Yeah, but and boots. I mean, we're both in boots today, so. cheap. Get them on Amazon or your local saw shop.
Emily, do you agree?
Yeah, I haven't bought a pair of chaps in a couple of years. I'd guess about $100.
Yep.
That's probably gonna be your biggest budget item. Helmets and earplugs, eye protection are pretty affordable, but chaps are kind of a bigger purchase that once you got them, you probably won't wear them out anytime soon.
Yep.
There was one question about the direction of the chain, how to tell correct way for teeth direction on the bar.
Teeth cut towards you in the bottom of the bar. So if you're sawing with the power head upright, the chain will cut to you. The sawdust will come to you.
I've heard of a little helpful thing like Santa's sleigh. If you look at the tooth on its profile, it kind of looks like Santa's sleigh is going away from you on the top of the bar. That's something handy.
That's a good one. Yeah.
That kind of works. It's like
Yep.
funny little thing to picture, but works for me.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
What are the steps for dealing with a pinched saw?
Get another saw. Or one of the things is if you're doing just the opposite of wedge, put a wedge in. Or this one's pretty easy. Of course, just but if you have a big tree, yeah. That was a how not to. That was a Bob Vila how not to. So, yep. So, even I do.
Yeah,
Some people that, the other thing somebody asked pre is cutting on the ground. So you did the how to roll it over. Just a second. Let's see if I got
And Emily, if you have a alternative too for dealing with a saw.
So I'm gonna, can you see that? So several different companies make these. They're like a PV, but they have a little bar underneath. And you can grab the log, roll it up, and it'll be 6-8 inches off the ground. We have one just over there. I don't know if you can swing over and see it, but we have a PV. I rolled it up on a couple of cookies. And again, keep your chain out of the dirt. Yeah. So whatever method you use, but these are pretty slick. They're 60 to 80 bucks, but if you're doing a lot and it's all spread out, these are handy. When the Woodsmith team cuts, we'll actually stick them on stickers, and so they can just saw away, and the trees don't, logs don't drop down. So yeah.
Yeah, if your bar is really, really pinched in a heavy green log, it can be really, really frustrating and challenging to get it out.
Yep.
At times, you can possibly take your wedge and try to put it in that kerf and drive it in with a falling axe. That may or may not work. You might have to take the bar nuts off and leave your bar and chain in that log until you can get somebody else with another power head. But if you start reefing on your power head, there's a chance that you're going to bend your bar,
Hurt your back. Yep.
Your back. So you might have to just think about buying a buddy a 6-pack of beer. If you get cut out of a log, the tradition is to buy your friend a 6-pack, whoever cuts you out. But most folks will have other sawyers around, so just turn.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
You should always saw in pairs, so that if that does ever happen, and just from a safety standpoint, especially when you're falling in the woods, you never saw alone. Yeah. So.
Yep. And a good indication if you miss that bind and you start cutting into that tree far enough that you can't get your bar out, that you might need to reassess your understanding of binds. Because everybody does get pinched here and there, but it's a good reminder that you need to pay attention to what you're cutting.
Yep.
With that in mind of having sawyers nearby, cutting in groups, how do you approach people under the age of 18 or young sawyers? Is it something that you advise under supervision, or almost
I mean,
never?
you want them to learn. I don't know what the law is in Montana. I would say 16 with supervision, because because you want to teach them the right way. I don't know what laws are. Some probably programs maybe have rules for under 18. Yeah, I don't know, but it's just whether it's hunter safety or anything like that, you want to teach them the right way first. You don't want them to have to learn on their own like everybody else used to.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say it probably depends on the individual. If they're responsible and safe and they've watched you cut for a while, it's probably going to be okay for them to start getting some comfortability with the saw, under supervision, of course.
Yeah.
You know, you're just as likely to run into a 45-year-old who could give a crap about safety, and PPE just as problematic. So
Wrong teacher. Yep. Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
Are the electric filers better or by hand?
What?
So what was the question?
Filers for the chain filing, is electric better than
Oh.
by hand?
I've always been a hand filer. I know they make the electric ones. I don't use them very much. If you do use those little electric ones, be very, very careful that you don't get the tooth too hot, because you will temper the tooth. The teeth are just under the hardness of your file. That's why you can file, but they still will get damaged. I've seen professional grinders where they'll hit them too fast and actually blew the tooth, and then it's hardened and you can't even file it. So if it works for you, I've seen those old saws that have as you rev the saw, McCulloch had one, and you turned in a little grinder wheel. I don't know, but I've always hand filed because I can see the chain. Yeah, I can see the teeth.
Yeah. Yeah, I hand file as well. A couple years ago, I got this really handy jig that Steel's come out with that has the round file and the flat file.
Okay.
It's got a gauge and a guide the whole
Yeah.
way that you're swiping through the tooth, and that has really, boy, I feel like my chains are as good as new
Cool.
after a while with that. But personal preference, know that if you're learning to sharpen a chain, you have to pay a lot of attention, go slow. You're kind of learning an art form, and it takes a minute, so be patient. And know that you might be taking a little bit more material off than Scott or I would, but just go slow and do a good job of it.
Okay, so this is a PPE question.
Okay.
One about pants and chaps and steel-toed boots. Do you recommend the pants versus like the
again, it's more
boots?
preference. I know a lot of the professional sawyers have gone to the pants. They've really improved. They're a little bit of mesh on the back to keep them cool. They don't get hung up as much on the brush. Again, personal preference. My thought is find something that fits you. But if you do shaps, get your size, because they come in different sizes. And I mean, the one Tana have on, I mean, they go almost to the ground, and they wrap around their calf. So really protective.
Yeah.
What was the
Yeah,
other
I'd
one?
say just get whatever product you know that you're going to wear. If you find yourself getting lazy throughout the day and you're hot with your buckled chaps, and you wind up taking them off at lunch and not putting them back on, then hold yourself accountable and get the chainsaw pants that you're not going to take off. So
Agree. Yep.
And boots, would you say the same for steel-toed boots?
OSHA got away from steel-toe boots because what was happening, they were dropping stuff on, and the steel toe would crush their toes. So at least for in the logging business, they're not required. I don't know. I wear a good leather. I wear corks when I'm sawing with the little teeth on the bottom, and Vibrams when I'm not. So I don't think they're required. What are your thoughts, Emily?
Yeah, I wind up generally working in leather boots that don't have a steel toe. Good ankle support, big, tall leather boots.
Yep.
My preference. But yeah, if you feel more comfortable in steel toe boots, there's nothing wrong with that. Just know that there's a pro and a con to each setup.
Yep.
And this is a good question for you, Emily. We're going to move into the shade as well.
Okay.
But when using public land, do you have to have a fire extinguisher to saw on public land?
Not as far as I know. Hoot owl restrictions will start to apply to us once it gets hotter and drier, and you'll need to know that your saw has a spark arrestor, but I don't think that you've got to have I've never heard of having a fire extinguisher to cut on public land.
Yes.
Is that true?
Well, for professional sawyers, when it goes to stage 1, which is basically the first in Montana, stage 1, which is campfire restrictions, and you have to start carrying the professional sawyers a fire extinguisher and a shovel. Stage 2 in Montana is the hoot owl. So no internal combustion engines off the road from 1 o'clock in the afternoon till midnight. And so you can saw on the road technically during hoot owl. I wouldn't, because if you start a fire and you're in violation, yeah, they could come after you. So we always err on the side of caution. And every state, at least in the West, where there's fires, will have some type of restrictions. And for logging in the truck, they used to have axe, bucket, shovel. Now it's just Pulaski and a shovel and a fire extinguisher. And it's just common sense. I mean, if you start a fire, if you can keep it, within 10-foot diameter versus 100 acres, yeah, that's the way to go.
And how often should you replace your chainsaw filter?
If you start seeing it wear or start seeing holes, a lot of them, the higher grades, like the one we saw, is actually a synthetic mesh with wire. Some of the older ones are just paper, and if you continually get them wet, they'll start to decay. You basically want to hold them up to the light, and if you can see a hole through them, time to replace them, because you don't want to start sucking any dirt. So it's one of those things, every time you clean them, knock them out. It's just like an air filter on the car. They used to say, hold it up to the light, and if you can see through it, it's still good. But that's through the filter itself, not holes.
So next question. I am very sorry I forgot a wood bank on the registered list, but thank you for joining us regardless. And what do you recommend about educating others at a wood bank who do not have background with chainsaws, the importance of cleaning, maintaining?
A couple, I guess this will be available online. The course, yeah, the two videos, the YouTube videos that Peter Kolb and I did, they're both about 15 minutes. They're under the Montana State University Extension. I think you'll send out links.
Yes.
Okay.
So we also have a reference sheet of every chainsaw training we could find in the country. Some are in person, some are online, and that will be made available and sent to you all who registered and attended. Many of them are video based. Many of them are pay to attend, but they all seem like excellent courses. Game of logging is offered a lot in the Northeast. In the West, there are some tribal specific opportunities based on the tribe and their partnerships around. The Forest Service does have sawyer courses, but they are somewhat difficult to find and attend without being in the federal government, but it is still a career opportunity for those that might be interested in taking it even further.
Yeah, there's several. Montana has a Woman in the Woods weekend, usually in late May. We put this on for the Montana Landowner Association every now and then. So they're out there. And but the videos Peter and I did were professionally done. They really go into the saw maintenance like we talked, and they actually go into a little bit of falling.
And how would someone get into the profession of
professional falling? That's a tough one, because a lot of loggers are going mechanical because they can't find professional loggers or professional sawyers. It's a very dangerous job. You're working in 10 below and 3 feet of snow or 95 degrees with ticks out. And so loggers were getting, or the sawyers were getting tougher and tougher. They were demanding $500 a day when saw 6 hours, and those were the good ones. So we actually, some of the Wismas team, they were really getting interested in sawing, so I helped them out a little bit, and they're actually doing some professional sawing for a local logger this summer, just breaking in, not full time, but just breaking in, working for a logger. But it's a good profession, but boy, there are days when you kick yourself, well, why did I choose this? And then there's other days when you find that huckleberry patch, you're going, yep, I found the right profession. So yeah.
And Emily, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think Scott's dead on. It's a profession that's hard to find people that want to do that kind of work anymore. It's very physical work. I work more as an arborist, and to get into that line of work, if you want to work with trees and chainsaws, there's a professional certification to become a certified arborist. Forestry school is a great way to kind of learn about the industry and different ways to work outside with trees. There's a lot of different avenues, and a lot of them aren't very well known. I didn't learn about becoming an arborist until well after college. So, yeah, once you kind of get into the field, you learn about all these different tendrils of what you can do with chainsaws. So, always feel like a day with a chainsaw is better than any day in an office. So if you like to be outside and do physical work, I can't recommend a better line of work.
Yeah, a lot of the Wismas team, they scatter through the summer, all in forestry jobs, some in fires, and yeah, so they're getting that experience while also going to school.
And we're down to the last couple questions. Is there a guide available for types of chains and what job they're best suited for what they're designed to do?
Oh, I'll have to look.
Aside from the PowerPoint slides, which
Yeah.
everyone will receive.
So the chisel chain or the chipper chain is rounded, and it has a little bit more surface area to dull, and that's traditionally what you use for cutting firewood. The chisel chain, which is at 90 degrees, is what most professionals run, and they actually file it with a flat file, and that's what all of my racing saws and this hot saw is it's chisel tooth with a flat file, which is a whole, yeah, that's an art itself. But let me look, I'll sort of see, but that would be the two differences. They make that semi anti-kickback. It's not as fast as a regular chain because it has more weight. But if you're worried about kickbacks, it won't eliminate them, but it helps reduce them.
Okay, and the very last question, are electric saws as powerful as gas?
What's that?
Are electric saws as powerful as gas?
No. And again, if you're talking apples and apples, that is the biggest DeWalt they make. And it would probably take me 25 seconds to saw through that log we did. And with my big saw, even the gas powered equivalent, probably more powerful. I don't know on torque versus joules versus horsepower, but I have both. And I use the little one, the electric, just for pruning and little things. When we run the steam powered sawmill, we'll use it for bumping knots and stuff like that. But if you're cutting firewood all day, yeah, I've noticed you'll eat batteries a lot, even with the big 60, 60 volt ones.
Okay, and we did get a question about the range of our firewood banks grantees that we know of through Alliance for Green Heat. And there's a map to all of our firewood banks that we've partnered with on our website at firewoodbanks.org. Under the grantees tab, you can see every firewood bank out there. We also have a list of all Montana banks if anyone in Montana would like to just have that quick reference sheet for what's in your state, because they have a pretty robust network up to 8 firewood banks now, where they're a mix of tribal, nonprofit, and faith-based.
So we had one of this Peter Kolb that was in a really bad traffic accident about 5-10 years ago. And we started to ask, what do you need? And he says, man, I just didn't get my firewood in. So we had a local logger bring in a full truckload of firewood. Well, one of the things we found out years ago was you can only have a couple guys sawing, everybody else is standing around. So a guy brought a bobcat, and we actually made a whole log truck into piles, probably about piles of 5 or 6 logs. And we had 20, 25 people, but they were all broken into piles. And we were done, cut, split, and stacked in the shed, whole log truck of firewood, and by noon. So the key is, if you're going to ever do that, split it up. Don't just have everybody trying to saw on a pile, because that won't work.
Okay, and now we're to the end of our time, but there was one question about apprenticeships available for teaching. Emily or Scott, any feedback on that?
Not that I know of. So,
What was the question?
Apprenticeships available for teaching SARS.
That's a great question. So through the Red Ants Pants Chainsaw classes, we do have an apprenticeship program. The first year you come and observe what the course is about, and then in the future there's the ability to become an instructor. But if you have some chainsaw background knowledge and you like talking about saws, it's a great way to get involved, and again, a really fun group of people. So Amy Freund would be the person to contact about possible internships.
And we do have a last slide to show of email addresses for both Scott and the Red Ants Pants Foundation. We also want to just thank everyone for attending today. It's been really great to see this one come through. Emily and Scott, you've been amazing to work with, and I hope to know enough about chainsaws one day to educate in the same great way you do.
Sure.
We also want to thank our Forest Service partners, because without the Wood Education Resource Center, we would not have the ability to put on these webinars. So thank you, Forest Service, thank you, Scott, and thank you, Emily, and thank you all in attendance. I will follow up with an email, but share the recording.
If you ever have any questions, go ahead and email me.
Thank you.
Okay.